So, government has been accused of letting down victims of apartheid-era injustices. The Good Party's Secretary General, Herron, says that some elderly people have been sleeping outside the Constitutional Court recently in a protest which was meant to pressure government to honour their right and deliver reparations for those who suffered under the racist regime. Joining us now is Herron, Good Party Secretary General. As I was saying, he's also a Member of Parliament. Welcome to Daytime Update. Brett, so this is the second statement I think I've read from you on this issue in as many weeks. Why are you pursuing it with such vigour right now?
Well, it's an issue that I think is really important, given that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission concluded its work 20 years ago. And it was a process of restorative justice meant to heal our nation and address the abuses of the past. And I think it's astounding that 20 years later, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's work has not been fully implemented. And I mean, the failure to implement that work, it gives rise to this dysfunctional society, deeply divided society, and fails the victims of apartheid on whose backs, lives and limbs this democracy was established or was won. So for me, the disappointment is that 20 years after the TRC finished its work, we haven't had a single prosecution for anyone who died in detention. 90 apartheid activists died in detention of the apartheid security forces. There's been no prosecution. The state deprioritized prosecuting those offenders or perpetrators of apartheid abuses who did not get amnesty. Those prosecutions have not taken place. They were deprioritized for 20 years. And outside the Constitutional Court, we have a group of elderly people who claim that they have not yet received their reparations or that the process of granting reparations was not fair.
And what do they feel, or what do they tell you they believe would be fair in terms of, shall we say, even compensation for the horrors they suffered or suffered by their loved ones?
Well, the TRC process adopted a closed list of victims who would be entitled to reparations. And the TRC also recommended that the reparations be at 120,000 rand per person. What the state adopted in 2003, and the regulations have not been updated since 2003, was that those victims would get 30,000 rand in reparations. So they are protesting the amount of the reparations, that it doesn't align with the TRC's recommendations. They're also protesting the closed list, and they are arguing that there are victims of apartheid abuses who did not come forward during the time of the TRC, but that they should still be recipients of reparations. And they're also arguing that they have members amongst themselves who are in the closed list and have still not received their 30,000 rand.
And what do you make then of government's commitment to dealing with this issue? Because whenever questions around redress or reparations and justice for survivors and victims of the apartheid regime are raised, government says it is still committed to making sure that those wrongs are addressed.
Well, I think that I'm disappointed in government's response. The President's Fund, which funds the reparations, has accumulated a 1.8 billion rand surplus with only 140 million rand of contingent liabilities. So the fund has a massive surplus, and it identifies or recognizes that there are about 4,000 people who are yet to receive reparations, and that's the 140 million rand in contingent liabilities. The Department of Justice set up a task team to do community rehabilitation projects in 2017, 5 years ago, and they haven't implemented a single project in 5 years. And then we have the failure to prosecute. I mean, right now the Western Cape High Court is conducting a real inquest into the death in detention of the late Imam Herron. I mean, the apartheid court found nothing wrong with his death more than 50 years ago. And that family's been waiting over 50 years for justice. And for as long as we don't deal with the injustices of the past, we are never going to really heal and build a nation based on fairness and justice and acknowledging the lives and the people who were abused in the process to get us here.
Right. So you've referenced the inquest currently ongoing in the Western Cape into the murder by the apartheid system of the Imam Herron there. In the last few years, we've also seen an inquest happening into the murder of Ahmed Timol, also by the apartheid security branch. Recently, the Justice Minister was saying that the NPA will refer about 129 apartheid-era cases which have been unsolved to police for investigation. When you look at all of that, is it a glimmer then of hope, a sign that work is happening, even if it's happening slowly?
Well, I mean, it's happening unacceptably slowly. I mean, 20 years after the TRC concluded its work, for the National Prosecuting Authority now to be jumping into action and to be referring 129 cases for investigation is very slow. And we must remember that the TRC identified about 300 cases where there needed to be prosecutions. So yes, there has been some action recently, but in the case of Ahmed Timol, for example, the accused in that case died, and so the Timol family will never receive justice because his murder has never been litigated or prosecuted, and the accused has died.
Right.
The Justice Minister also announced, or the National Prosecuting Authority announced, almost 4 months ago, that they were ready to proceed with the Craddock 4 prosecution, and there's been no subsequent announcement since then. So I think that many, many families have been let down by the state and by the justice system. Okay,
so Brett, with that in mind, you're a member of Parliament. You gave a speech, you spoke about this issue in Parliament. Your leader of the Good Party, Patricia de Lille, serves in the cabinet of the government of the day with the ANC and its ministers. What more are you doing to help these people who are waiting for justice decades on, beyond raising awareness? Is she, for example, Patricia de Lille, in cabinet, speaking about the need for urgent redress and justice?
Well, I mean, Patricia de Lille's in the cabinet, and she can't tell me what she talks about in cabinet. Cabinet is a confidential space. But I, as a member of Parliament outside of cabinet, will continue to raise this with the Minister of Justice. I think the Minister of Justice went to go meet with the Kulamani Galele campaign, which is the people sleeping outside the Constitutional Court. And then he correctly said, well, it's actually the President who needs to sort this out because the President drafts the regulations and gazettes them, and they haven't been updated since 2003. So I'm going to keep pressure on the President and on the Minister of Justice to make sure that the Kulamani campaign people are at least met and engaged with in a dignified way, even if their demands cannot all be met. And then on the prosecutions, keep pressure on the Minister of Justice and the prosecuting authority to move these prosecutions forward.
Brett Herron from the Good Party, good to speak to you. Brett is the Good Secretary General, also a member of Parliament.